What's happening, gang? Good afternoon, rotoscouts baseball fans. Welcome to the show. Going live on a massive 13-game slate. If we look a little bit different, it's because we moved the desk to the other side of the room this afternoon. Got a little bit bored. The dog is always like under the table, as you guys have seen on shows, and like I would trip over him trying to get up to go get a new cup of coffee or whatever. And then I kind of realized that if I just moved the desk over like 2 feet to the left, put it against the other wall in this room, and open up that side of the room for him, there'd be a lot more room for both of us. So that's what we did. That's why we look a little bit different, but you can see some more of the decorations, the DVDs, and all that fun stuff behind me. We are going to go through this entire thing. Hopefully you guys can see and hear me. Yep, yeah, you can, because I just clicked over to YouTube. So say hello in the chat, drop a like, hit the subscribe button, all that good stuff if you're out there. I'll remind everybody that we are live in the old Discord here. Let me just say we're live now. So we are up and running. Joker's saying hi from down there. You can hear a little bit of whining probably in the background. So we're going to dive in. I'm going to click us over to the other view here. We're going to dive right in. I'm going to talk fast. We're going to not dilly-dally too much. I'll do the best I can to get us through this thing in kind of a appropriate clip. Lara's asking, what's the movie poster? Which movie poster? Oh, back the one with the duct tape on the wall over there. That's a Japanese movie poster for the movie Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. One of my favorites. All-time classic. Love the book, Hunter S. Thompson book, and then Terry Gilliam did a killer adaptation of it with Benicio del Toro and Johnny Depp back in the 90s. That's the Japanese language poster just because I thought that was cool, and it's duct taped to the wall because my cat, when he was a kitten, decided to stretch up to the top of his powers from the top of my chair here and tear it down with his claws. So it's mostly ruined, but I still like it there. We've also got the Giants up there. There's an old Rangers player back over there. Don't steal Santa's elves, whatever they say. Don't sit or stand on Christmas Village, something like that. That's another remnant from the 90s. All kinds of good stuff. Yeah. So it's that's why it looks a little bit weird, but the front part might be recognizable with like the Johnny Depp there as Hunter Thompson. Great movie if you guys haven't seen it. Wild drug-fueled romp through Las Vegas. Who wouldn't want to do something like that, or at least watch something like that? Anyway, let's dive into this one. We've got a hell of a lot to talk about. Not a ton of time to talk about it, so we're going to go a little bit breezy here. We've got the first game on deck, the Guardians and the Orioles. Kyle Gibson against Cal Quantrill. They're both kind of like low-end-ish starters. Both guys can go out there, put up a decent start for you from time to time, but I think on such a deep slate, it's probably not necessary to go to these options. If you wanted to take a couple darts with Cal Quantrill at 6,200 on the DraftKings slate, I don't think it's entirely crazy, just based on price, but like I said, we've got so much depth, and there's other similarly priced guys. He doesn't project all that well. 25 has him like middle of the board in FanDuel points, and I don't really think he gets to that number. I respect this Orioles team a little bit too much, so he would need 6 clean innings and that kind of a start here to get to that number. I don't really trust that projection on him, and I don't think I'm going to have any of them. 12.8% strikeout rate for the year, a 4.75 ERA with a worse xFIP. That's not really what I'm looking for rostering against this Orioles team. At the same time, Gibson on the other side, we saw that one big game from him against the Tigers. That's the best start that I can remember from him this year. 3.82 ERA, 4.62 xFIP. Another guy worse in the expected FIP number than he is in the ERA. The expected FIP number is more what I care about here. So we're seeing a pitcher who is struggling to find even his previous like league average-ish quality overall. So I just don't really think there's any need to go to Gibson. 7,500 is fine price-wise. 8,900 on the FanDuel slate is definitely too expensive. The DK price 7,500. If you're a Kyle Gibson fan, if you love the Orioles, if you hate the Guardians, you really want to attack their weak lineup with a pitcher, fine. That price is okay to do that with. But with his 16.2% strikeout rate and 8.9% swinging strike rate, and the Guardians, I think it was like 5th ranked, and we're talking about tenths of a percentage point difference. But I think they're like 19.1%, or maybe it was 19.8%. But regardless, very, very good at limiting strikeouts against righties. So I just don't see a big ceiling here. Maybe he goes 6 clean innings, goes 3 or 4 strikeouts, something like that, and limits runs. But I don't see a big ceiling on a deep slate here. Really much reason to go to Gibby. Oh, I forgot to hide these old projections here. Free projections for everybody for this first game. Let me do that real quick so that we're not giving away the whole farm. Plus these projections, like, they are a deliberately high number. So like if you took them and compared them to like what was projected over at Stochastic, it would look weird, and you'd be like, why are they a little bit high? And it's because that's how they need to come out in my model and to get me where I want to be. So let me just do this so I don't have to answer any questions. But, damn it. Did not do that right. Bear with me, guys. For a sec. This is what happens because I went to, what do we normally do this? 65, 40, 15, something like that. That looks about right, probably. Now and then we need to just tell it to show that only. Hey, there we go. We're back to our dots. Right, so you can see green dots on Ramirez and Naylor on the Guardian side of this. Nobody in the Orioles side really looking all that strong in terms of the relative projections from this game. But again, I think that's something where this Orioles team is certainly talented enough to get to a pitcher like Cal Quantrill. There's plenty of contact available. He's been decent at limiting power, 2.89% home run rate so far this season. So I would go to the Orioles side of this if I'm rostering hitters from this game. But neither side of it looked all that compelling. If I'm going to Orioles, the projected lineup: Adam Frazier, Adley Rutschman, no Cedric Mullins. He got banged up yesterday. Came out of the groin. Came out of the game with an injured groin last night. So I expect like this Frazier, Rutschman, Santander, Mountcastle, Gunnar configuration of the lineup. So primarily, if I'm going to Orioles, I'm looking like 2 through 5 here. Maybe a little smattering of Jorge Mateo, depending on how the confirmed lineup eventually comes out. But it's a little bit of a ding to their overall typical quality here. And then the Guardians on the other side, like you're just looking at a bunch of guys who limit strikeout rate and really haven't done much else. And Gibson is enough of a pitcher to get through this lineup cleanly a few times, limit their already limited power potential. Ramirez is struggling for him. Naylor's got 7 home runs to lead the team. Nobody, only Ramirez above average for run creation. This team has good pieces. We thought they would be like a running hit for average type of a machine this year, and it just really hasn't come through. So don't really like much on the Guardian side. This is a game where, like, if this was the outlier early game, you could say like, let me take the 7 o'clock game off the board here so that I can have more time to work with my lineups. It's just a low-end option overall, both on the mound and at the plate, I think. Let's move on. We'll jump over here. Larry didn't notice I was looking at the home run model, right? Yeah. So looking at this one, this is one where you can look at the home run marks. They're only average because the Brewers are kind of like an average-ish home run hitting team. You can see 8 home runs leads the projected lineup in terms of the current year power. But they're going up against Yusei Kikuchi, who is just lousy for home run upside. You can see he's given up a 6.36% home run rate on 92.5 miles an hour of average exit velo, 48.4% hard hits, 11.5% barrels this year. That is a sustained trade over time. It's actually gotten worse over time. I know it's still small sample this year, 51 1/3, 10 starts. Keep that in mind. But looking back over time, last year, 20 starts, double the sample, 102 2/3 innings, 5.07% home run rate, 91.6 miles an hour average exit velo, 47.1% hard hits, a 14.8% barrel rate. He's actually cut the barrels by a little bit. This is just wildly unsustainable. Year before, 11% barrels, 47% hard hits, 91.9 average exit velo, 4.05% home run rate in 157 innings. He's okay at from time to time for strikeouts, like 27.3% strikeout rate last year, 24.5% the year before, dipped to only 21.8% this year, and I just think he's targetable for that power, particularly with a lineup for the Brewers that goes a little bit righty heavy when they're facing a lousy lefty like this. You can get some Darren Ruff in there, you can get some Mike Brasso in there, some Tyrone Taylor with a little bit of power upside from the right side of the plate. You can see they don't carry through for like super strong projections, but keep in mind, again, these are these dots are relevant to these players and these players only. That's the only way I can get it to show. So it's all relative to what's showing in this game. But compared to the other side, to the Blue Jays, projections wise, they're not as strong. But I think there is sneaky home run upside here. You can see a couple guys that are average-ish type guys, like a Mike Brasso is sitting in an 8.1 in our home run model. He's not a major home run hitter, but he's a platoon specialist. He's got 4 on the season. He's got a 212 ISO, 70 plate appearances, and focuses on hitting lefties hard. Darren Ruff is a similar story. If Ruff hits third for 2,100, 2,000 across sites, that's a major piece of value. He's only made 50 plate appearances, has yet to homer, but he's a another guy who does well against left-handed pitching. Owen Miller's been really good to start the season, up at the top of the lineup, 330, 371, 513, 4 sneaky home runs, 6 stolen bases. Nice little player for 3,000, 2,800 with multi-position eligibility on both sites. So I think you can stack the Brewers in interesting ways, and that's not even talking about Christian Yelich, obviously. I'm not talking about William Contreras yet in this lineup. So a lot of interesting parts to that lineup. Tyrone Taylor, I mentioned, 17, I think it was home run. What was the total? Am I thinking of somebody else? It's 17. Yep, I was right. 17 home runs and 405 plate appearances. Like I said the other day, all these numbers are just like jammed into my head now. I worry to think about what I've forgotten to replace these numbers with. I'm going to go home and see my parents and not remember their names, but I'll know how many home runs Tyrone Taylor hit in 2022 for like the rest of my life now. Joey Weimer, Bryce Turin, kind of low end to round out the lineup there. They both have a little bit of speed, moderate power. The Blue Jays side of things against Adrian Hauser. Hauser's made 4 starts, 20 innings, 16.9% strikeout rate. Hasn't been lousy for power, but 44.6% hard hits. He's decent at keeping the ball down, 5.4 degree average launch angle, 4.6% barrels, which is what saves him from, being worse in terms of home run upside. Over the last few seasons in limited samples, he's been pretty good at checking home run power. So that's my concern if I'm looking at the Blue Jays, and you can see that translating through in the home run marks there. Springer, Bichette, Vladdy Guerrero sitting in the 5s, the 7s range in the home run model. That's obviously, cutting their power a little bit. So that would be my concern, but I do still think you can string together sequencing. Obviously, they can hit home runs against Adrian Hauser. It's a question of whether they will, but this is a very good lineup. There are very nice-looking, affordable bats. Brandon Belt, most particularly, if he hits clean up at 2,500, you guys know I really like that spot. Former big-time home run hitter from the left side of the plate, and a guy who's been involved, despite not hitting for a ton of power so far, a 112 WRC plus in his 144 plate appearances. So he's been involved, and I think he will hit for more power going forward. 10.1% barrels, 40.6% hard hits. Chapman has come back to earth, but that dropped his price back down. 4,600 on DK. 3,600 is still a little bit elevated on FanDuel, but I think he is a very, very good hitter. Still carrying the 21.8% barrels, 60.6% hard hits, 200 ISO, 137 WRC plus mark. Merrifield, Varsho, Kirk, Kiermaier, all usable parts down the bottom of the lineup. We were kind of marveling at Kiermaier's hot start. He's an elite defensive outfielder. I think he's in his mid-30s at this point, but still, high-end center fielder who can still really go get the ball. But he's never been very good at the plate. He's always been below average type guy. Every now and again would turn on one at the plate. This season, over 154 plate appearances, 319, 366, 511 in his first season in Toronto. 4 home runs, 5 stolen bases early. He was on MLB Network the other day. Is Kiermaier hurt? He was in the projected. I grabbed these projected from Fantasy Schmabs. So, if he's day-to-day or out of the lineup, forgive me, and I'll slow down talking about him. But what let me see if he's... yeah, he's out of the confirmed lineup. They confirmed this lineup since we started the show. So let me pop the confirmed in here. We'll talk about... Joker, keep it done, buddy. We'll talk about the confirmed lineup instead and see what the changes are. Good call out there, Larry. I didn't realize that he'd gotten banged up. The interesting thing to note about Kiermaier, just to round off that thought, though, is that he was talking the other day about for the first time in his life he's wearing contact lenses this season, and all of a sudden he can see the ball, and now he can hit the ball. So watch out for that the rest of the way. I don't expect it to carry on through the entire season, but we'll see. So let's see. The confirmed version of the lineup runs basically as expected, except Kevin Biggio is in that 9th spot instead of Kiermaier. 11.1% barrels on the season in 81 plate appearances, 4 home runs. Maybe he gives you a little bit of sneaky pop, but Kevin Biggio has not been a very good major leaguer. Certainly not as good as his dad was. Let me grab these other confirmed lineups. The Phils got confirmed here in the last few minutes. Poor Joker thinks I'm talking to him. That's why he gets all whiny and starts barking during these shows. He's like, I know you're talking to me, but I don't know what you're telling me. We're not talking about food or walks or anything. Blue Jays, Phillies, the Tigers. Do I have the Tigers already? Bear with me. I just want to... Such a large slate, I want to be able to talk about confirmed lineups as much as possible and just have all my stuff updated as I'm going through. Detroit's not on this slate, right? That's the other slate. That's why it's not popping up. Yeah, that's the early slate. If you're playing that early slate, Detroit lineup looks even weaker than usual. All right, let's jump back into what we were actually talking about here. So you get Biggio at the bottom of the Blue Jays lineup. Maybe you wrap him around, but he hasn't been getting on base, hasn't been hitting for average. So maybe it's a little bit of a sneaky power play at 2,300, 2,100. but not great there. So if I'm playing this game, I don't really need shares of either pitcher. I like the Blue Jays bats for sure, but potentially limited on the power side of things, so you might not get the big home run outbursts, but I think they sequence. I think they create runs against Hauser here. And then the Brewers bats are, I think, a little bit sneaky. Maybe not sneaky is the right word, but I think they're a good value play, let's say, because they're cheap on both sides, and they have some upside for power. So I like the Brewers bats. So it's bats for me on both sides. Don't really need the pitchers in this one. I wouldn't begrudge anybody. Let me just touch on Kikuchi real quick. Because of his strikeout potential and the kind of low-end Brewers lineup, despite wanting to go to them for power, if he pitches a clean game for home runs, he could find you some strikeouts, could find you some upside at 84, 85. He's not a terrible buy. He projects okay. But he's just not for me. I typically tend to play the power going against Kikuchi, and I've never really regretted that. Let's go to the Reds game here. 2 confirmed lineups in this one. Liking the looks of the Reds lineup in terms of the configuration here. I like the Friedel McLean, India Fraley version of this lineup up top. Spencer Steer hitting 6, Nick Senzel, Stuart Fairchild down the bottom of the lineup. Semi-interesting. But what I don't like about the opportunity here for the Reds, and you can see they project okay for potential for run creation against Brian Bayo here, but what I don't like is typically... and this is, I say typically, and it's in a small sample last year, so we got to figure out what's real about this guy, right? I'll scroll over so we can look at it. Last year, 57 1/3 innings and 11 starts. He allowed 1 home run in that stretch. Kept launch angle to 5.3 degrees, barrels 5.4, 88 miles an hour of average exit velo. This year, 7 starts, he's allowed 7 home runs, 4.46% home run rate, 48.1% hard hits, 90.9 miles an hour of average exit velo, but still only a 2.4 degree average launch angle, which is kind of what I want to focus on there, because that's a little bit telling. That just tells me he's left some pitches up 7 times and made mistakes, and the mistakes have been loud mistakes. But a guy who keeps the ball down with that much reliability is somebody who, you can reasonably expect to check power. And it's going up against a team that doesn't have a ton of power to begin with. So you can see all these marks for the Reds are below 5 in the home run model. Somebody was asking, I think, 10 is the what I refer to as the magic number for home run upside. So that's a kind of the barometer there. Anything below 5 I kind of call like a below average chance. 5 we'll call average. So kind of below average power upside. I could see them stringing together some runs. Keep in mind, again, this is relative to to everybody's projections in this game. Bayo's in the upper 50s on ground ball rate, and the weather is cool in Boston. Yeah, Steve, that's kind of what I'm talking about. He keeps the ball down. So the 7 home runs he's given up, I don't really worry about it. It just means that he's made a few mistakes. And from a young starter, you're going to get that. But like, if you're going to take him, maybe you take him against these Reds. You can see he's got like a mid-board projection for me. I think the price on DK is very nice at 7,000. I think the 8,600 on FanDuel you can get away with. 23.6% strikeouts, pitching to a 4.08 ERA, a 3.69 xFIP despite the home run problems, 12% swinging strikes. So I think he's a decent play, and I think he's going to cap the upside for the Reds here. So I kind of ignore these green dots at the top of the Reds lineup. If you wanted to draw a few shares of the Friedel McLean, India Fraley part of the lineup, maybe you can mix in Tyler Stevenson on DK as a cheap catcher. It's not great, but I could see it based on who Bayo's been in terms of the power this year. But it's not a great spot. The Red Sox on the other side going up against Ben Lively, definitely an interesting spot. They're showing a little bit of power. You can see Rafael Devers hitting second. It's a weird version of the lineup. It's the Tapia leadoff version, but I kind of like him. 2,225 lefty leadoff man. He's got speed. He's got a reasonable hit tool. Can hit for a little bit of low end pop, in rare instances, but hasn't done it much in 87 plate appearances, 1 home run this year. Not a big power option, but an interesting piece for correlated scoring, potentially for some stolen bases if he gets on. Put him together with Devers, Turner, Yoshida. Jarren Duran has kind of come back to earth a little bit, but he's back to 3,800, 3,300. Still having a nice season overall in the books here. So I think, 1 through 5 at the very least, this lineup plays pretty well. You have question marks around Tristan Casas. He's sitting at the Mendoza line for the season. 6 home runs, a 171 ISO. They're not getting what they wanted out of Casas, but he hits from the left side, hits for power when he does connect. Nice little 13.7% barrel rate, 42.1% hard hits. So there is definitely upside for Tristan Casas, but I don't love him because he's just not put it together at the major league level. Going up against Ben Lively, he's made 2 starts, thrown 17 innings, has kind of surprised with 27.3% strikeout rate, 4.5% walks, 2 outings out of the bullpen to bolster those numbers a little bit, but I think it was 8 strikeouts in each of the last 2 games. So maybe there's some weird sneaky upside with Lively there at 71, 74, but I don't really see it. So I don't think we need to go that route. You can see it doesn't project well for me. It's probably a limited innings projection for him, but Casas has been better this month. He was down around 158. Yeah, he's hit a little bit more this month, but overall it's just not been what they were expecting from the premium prospect. You hang your hat on the barrel rate, the hard hit rate. You hope it comes around. 28.1% strikeouts, 15% walks is fine. Like that's that high strikeout rate, but offsets it with good walk rate numbers. So the on base isn't quite up to snuff yet. The power isn't where we want it. So he just needs to hit for more power. I think it's going to come. I don't think he's a bust of a player or anything, but he hasn't produced it yet. He is cheap though. You get him at 2,700, 2,600 at first base. That's a nice buy in this spot for a team that was carrying one of the higher, if I'm remembering correctly, 5.37. I think that was the second highest implied run total on the board. So I do not want to in any way undersell the opportunity for the Red Sox here. There is definitely some upside for this team. And they come at good prices. You can see up and down the lineup, some very cheap prices. Helps you pay for Rafael Devers, where he's expensive at 61 on DK. Expensive and well worth it, by the way. 3,500 for Devers on FanDuel is actually pretty cheap. So that's a nice buy. Devers should probably not be less expensive than Yoshida. Good as Yoshida's been, Devers is the star on this team. So I like going to Red Sox bats. There's a lot of good lefties in that lineup. You can throw left-handed bats at Ben Lively here, and I'm not gonna chase any kind of upside ideas with Lively. On the other side, like I said, Bayo at price, I think you can maybe squeeze a little bit of value out of him. So I think it's Red Sox all day on both sides here, and don't really need too much of the Reds. If you wanted to go to some value bats, I wouldn't tell you were making a total mistake. Phillies-Mets game. This is one of those ones that had a little bit of wind blowing in toward home plate, which should give a little bit of a bump to the pitching. I do think there's opportunity for Kodai Senga in this matchup. 28.6% strikeout rate for the season, a 3.94 ERA, a 3.98 xFIP, but the whip is awful at 1.52. The walk rate is the big reason why. 14.6% walks. He's just been lousy for walks, gives up too much opportunity, and doing that against a team like Philly, that could get you in trouble pretty quickly. There's a lot of good bats in this lineup, although it is looking like we are getting a version of the lineup with no Bryce Harper in it, which is a downgrade to the Phillies lineup. Some of these are the first time I'm seeing the confirmed lineups, and in this case especially. So Stott, Turner, Castellanos, Schwarber, Real Muto, Alec Bohm, Brandon Marsh, Cody Clemens. If you're going to Phillies bats, that's still a very nice 8-man lineup. Dalton Guthrie in the final spot is at the mid price if you wanted to, if you need to offset price or whatever on the DK slate. He's fine, but not high end. But it's still a good lineup even without Harper in it. But that definitely does downgrade the lineup, maybe a little bit of a bump to Senga here. He's very affordable, 9,700, 9,600 for his strikeout upside, and the idea of talent. If not the results so far, the ability to limit home run upside. I do think there's upside for him. So I would go to him, but I would probably both sides it. I would grab some shares of Phillies. They're not an outrageous opportunity. He's got their run total in check at a decent number in Vegas, and I'm sure it came down even further with Harper out of the lineup. So they're not a great spot. They're like a mid-range stacking opportunity. What I do like about the Phillies, though, everybody's pretty cheap in the 4,000s on the DK slate, in the 2s and 3s on the FanDuel slate. So not a lot of expensive bats here if you're going to Philly. The Mets on the other side going up against Ranger Suarez. There's some upside there. What he's done well this season is in only 3 starts and 11 innings is limit launch angle and power. You can see 5.4% barrels, 5.4 degree average launch angle, a 1.82% home run rate, 87.7 miles an hour of average exit velo. And he's been decent for that throughout his career, right? We're not talking about giant samples. 29 starts last year. He was good at limiting power. 5.1 degree average launch, 2.27% home run rate. 4.4 degrees the year before. 0.96% home run rate was outstanding that season in terms of limiting power. Also struck out more. It was 12 starts and some innings out of the bullpen, if I'm remembering correctly. So that boosted his strikeout rate a little bit that season. He's come up year over year from 19.5% last season to 23.6% in the, again, very, very small start sample here, but he's also got a 9.82 ERA. The 3.16 xFIP, he'll be worse than that overall, but that's a lot more, who he is. He's obviously not a 9.82 ERA type of a pitcher. I think there's limited upside against the Mets. With the wind at his back, you could get there. At 5,200 on the DK slate, you could probably take some value shots with Ranger Swatters. It's not great, but I think there's enough on the bone at that cheap price. That's a mid-range hitter price on the DK slate. 6,400 on the FanDuel slate, with the idea of needing to get to the quality start on a deep slate. I don't really see it, even at price. Price and projection. There's other ways to take that. But if you want to throw a few Ranger Swatters darts, I think DK is your spot to do it. At the same time, I like this Mets lineup. I really like the idea of Francisco Alvarez jumping up to the second spot. He's been mashing. They called him up early to fill in for injured catchers, and he's a premium prospect. Took him a little bit of time to figure it out, but now over 113 plate appearances, 8 home runs already, a 288 ISO, 42% better than average creating runs. You can sign me up for some of that at 3,100 on the DK slate as a catcher. 3,200 on FanDuel. I think you can play him in that util spot. I wouldn't play him instead of Pete Alonso, but I'd certainly play him alongside Pete Alonso on the FanDuel slate. And you don't have to worry about that on DK where he's a catcher. Nimmo, excellent leadoff hitter, 4,500, 3,200, 38% better than average creating runs, gets on at a 392 clip, so excellent option ahead of Alvarez, Lindor. Pete Alonso, who leads the entire slate with a 17.14 in our home run model, leads the league with 20 home runs on the season, has a massive 327 ISO for the year, 49% better than average creating runs. Nothing not to like about Pete Alonso. Mark Vientos, another premium prospect back in this lineup, 3,100, 2,400. The idea of significant power upside for those prices is appealing. 1 home run in his 24 plate appearances, but was mashing at the minor league level, and is a significant power option with first base and third base eligibility on the DK slate. Marte struggling. McNeil, BABIP-based slap hitter. Pham, Escobar, lower end veterans with the idea of some potential at the plate. A couple home runs, couple stolen bases on the Pham side of things. Neither's great, but they're both cheap, so I think you can go to the Mets, up and down the lineup here if you want to, but Ranger Swatters, again, at that DK price, there's a little bit of appeal there. You need him to keep the ball down, you need him to find some strikeouts and not walk anybody. So probably some Senga for me, and some bats on both sides, and maybe a little bit of a four corners game here. KC going up against Miles Mikolas. I am getting a big projection on Miles Mikolas. It's supported by the idea of innings pitched and clean innings pitched. Not necessarily strikeouts, but there's a ton of strikeouts in this lineup. So even a guy with a 17.7% strikeout rate in 61 2/3 11 starts this year, I think can find strikeouts against a confirmed lineup with a 26.7% current year strikeout rate. That is aggressive. Mikolas is pretty good at limiting power. He's got an 8.3% barrel rate allowed, but 38.3% hard hits is fine. 90 miles an hour of average exit velo is questionable. That's a little bit high against a team that does have a significant amount of power and a lot of hard hitters. But if he's missing bats, I worry about that a lot less. So we need Mikolas to come out and find his strikeout stuff. But overall, 4.23 ERA, 4.34 xFIP, only a 5.2% walk rate. Not a good strikeout pitcher. Doesn't pitch his way out of trouble, but doesn't get himself into trouble all that often. So I kind of believe in a sturdy projection for Mikolas here at 7,700, 8,200 across sites. I think he's usable on both sites. I like the buy better on the DK slate. I don't know what his ownership's going to look like. I expect he'll probably be relatively popular, but not crushingly so. So I think he's going to be a very playable piece on both sides tonight, with the idea of some strikeout upside for him in this matchup. I'm not saying he's going to go out there and sit down 12 of these guys via the strikeout, but a for him strikeout upside of 6 or 7, perfectly fine. That's believable for me. At the same time, I would probably draw a few hedge stacks of Royals. I think there's a few good projections up at the top of the board, as you can see with those green dots up there. And there's a few bats that I think you guys probably at this point know that I like in this lineup, from 1 through 5 in particular. I think that's where you focus for if you're stacking Royals. Nick Pratto I really like. He's still cheap, 3,100, 2,900, outfield and first base on both sites. He is a former first round pick 301, 395, 437 on the season, creating runs 34% better than average, 2 home runs already, a stolen base in 119 plate appearances. Nothing really not to like at first base from Prado. 43.8% hard hit rate. He struck out a little bit too much at 32.8%, but I think that'll come down overall. And it's a good hit tool, good power. So I like Prado going ahead of Vinny Pasquantino, who's difficult to strike out. He's the only guy who's difficult to strike out in this current lineup. 12.9% strikeout rate is excellent. The hit tools come back to earth a little bit so far this season, but I believe that there's more there. 9 home runs, a 204 ISO, 118 WRC plus. Sal Perez is obvious, 12 home runs, 123 WRC plus, 249 ISO. Bobby Witt has kind of come to life a little bit since they dropped him to the cleanup spot. He's hitting for power, 11.6% barrels, 42.4% hard hits, up to 10 home runs now, 16 stolen bases. Really coming to life a little bit in this role. So I like him in that spot. MJ Melendez, I've talked about a few times, 13.6% barrels, 55.9% hard hits. I think he hit one last night. Was that last night? I think it was last night that he hit his 5th home run, but is hopefully coming to life a little bit, but is still cheap, only 3,500, 2,800, and should hit more home runs than he has so far with that kind of contact. So I like MJ there. The bottom of the lineup is weak with this team though, so that's where you run into concerns about turning the lineup over. If you're building full stacks, you run into kind of thin and kind of concentrated ownership around the only few key bats here. So Mike Massey, Michael Garcia, Nicky Lopez, Drew Waters, kind of a weak back end, but they help offset price and any popularity concerns that might come up with this team. A little bit of multi-position eligibility, but not a lot on the bone there. Cardinals against Zach Greinke. This is probably a major stack across the industry. I would assume that they're going to be super popular on all sites tonight, all configurations of this lineup. You get Brendan Donovan in the leadoff spot in the confirmed lineup, which I like. I was projecting Tommy Edman there with Donovan hitting like 5th or 6th, but 6th or 7th. But they're going with the Donovan up top, Tommy Edman hitting 9th. I think you can use those guys in the same lineup, or you can use one or the other with Edman acting as a wraparound from the bottom of the lineup there. He's always had value in that capacity or in the leadoff spot. 6 home runs, 7 stolen bases for Tommy on the season, 5 home runs, 4 stolen bases for Brendan Donovan on the season. Larry C says Greinke's been frustrating. He hasn't been the total gas can that you expect. Yeah, and that's what I was going to bring up about Greinke, right? We've got a 4.55 ERA, but only a 4.13 xFIP. He only strikes out 17.4%, but where he gets by is, in addition to just guile and veteran know-how, is a 3.4% walk rate. And that's a sustained trait for Zach Greinke. He's never walked that many hitters. A 1.19 whip based on some batting average on balls in play, but he doesn't get himself into trouble. When he does put runners on, he doesn't really have much ability to punch his way out of it via the strikeout. So there's the idea of power against him. There's the idea of run creation if they can manage it, but he doesn't help teams out. So that's where he is able to sometimes pitch those frustrating games, those 3-4 runs instead of the 7-8 runs and the 9-10 runs that we really want. That's kind of who he is. So yeah, he's a frustrating pitcher. I kind of think of Michaelis in a similar breath. I just think his numbers today are supported by the idea of strikeout upside against the Royals and a bit of the ability to pitch deep and a lack of major power upside against. You can see Greinke's given up a lot more in terms of the home runs, 4.24% home run rate, although the power numbers the premium contact numbers are very, very similar for these two starters. So they're two very same type starters in just different spots. The Cards, one of the best teams in baseball creating runs this season against right-handed pitching. They're difficult to strike out. 20.3% strikeout rate for the confirmed lineup is one of the better marks in the game. Ton of power up and down the lineup, obviously. So you really like this St. Louis lineup. They did lose Lars Nootbaar. That's why he's not leading off. He went out with an injury last night as well. But you still love Donovan into Goldschmidt, Gorman, Arenado. Some Wilson Contreras is fine there. Alec Burleson. Paul DeJong has been on fire for power since coming back to the lineup. Juan Yepez at a cheap price, 2,500, 2,400, a lot of power later in the lineup. Only 40 plate appearances, 2 home runs this season, 189 ISO for Yepez. Better against lefties, but I think he's fine to use at those prices if you're going to a lot of St. Louis stacks. And I think the run total, the matchup against Greinke here supports that. We want to go to some of these stacks. 5.22 implied run total, one of the, the 4th highest on that board? Yeah, 4th highest. Dodgers in the late game. Spoiler alert. By far the highest implied team total. By far the highest home run marks in our model. So we'll talk about the Dodgers when we get there. But I like the Cards here. I totally agree, though. It would not be surprising to see one of those stupid 4-run Zach Greinke starts. Cards don't go off. They don't happened to hit a home run in the last few innings against the bullpen to help you out. So it's annoying, but they're cheap. They're easy to stack. I really like the upside, especially at the top of the lineup for St. Louis. So I'll have a good amount of cards. I'll have a fair amount of Miles Mikolas, some Royals bats, but limited on the Royals bats side of things. I think that was supported as well in the run total in Vegas for the Royals here. If we look, 3.88 or 3.89 implied total against Miles Mikolas. You're not seeing a lot of upside for the Kansas City side here. Let me take a swig of iced tea, see if I can get Joker to calm down. I don't know what his deal is. Brought to you today by the career of Didi Gregorius, a solid Yankee for a few seasons. Underrated. Well, no, probably properly rated. Came in, difficult job of replacing Derek Jeter, all that fun stuff. Trey, I'm with you. I hate playing St. Louis. Burned me yesterday in a Logan Allen lineup. I play a lot of St. Louis. They've won me money. They've burnt me. They've probably burnt me more frequently than they've won me money, but they've won me a significant amount of money when they've won me money. So it's kind of the way it goes. A lot of bats to really like in this team. What I would watch out for is popularity here. They'll probably be pretty popular against Greinke. So if they get to outrageous points on a 13-game slate, it certainly wouldn't be a mistake to maybe undercut the field. Still roster them, but undercut the field and go in different directions. There's a lot of good spots and a lot of similarly projected spots today. Let's see if we got confirmed lineups in this one yet. Rays and the Cubbies. Looks like some more lineups have rolled in. Nope, not this one yet, though. So we'll talk Shane McClanahan to start things off. I think that's the appropriate spot to start. We don't really need to talk about Kyle Hendricks really at all. Pretty weak option, even at 66, 68, 4 1/3 in his first start back. Glad to see him back in the league after a bad injury last year, but not a lot of upside for Hendricks. But McClanahan, 11,400, 11,200. Difficult pricing, but totally worth it in this start. Winded is back in Wrigley. It's another game with a little bit of wind blowing in toward home plate. Not a significant amount, but it is Wrigley, so there is the idea that it might cap power a little bit. That would cut into the upside for the Cubs. That would cut into the upside for the Rays. We saw that with good pitching on the mound, of course, last night as well. We saw that game. I think it was a 1-0 game, right? So it could be a similar result tonight, and if you want to roster pitching, you come down on the McClanahan side of the matchup, and you figure out how to pay for hitting elsewhere. 29.1% strikeout rate, only allowing a 2.33% home run rate, 37.3% hard hits, a 1.97 ERA. The 3.56 xFIP is probably more honest, but hey, 1.97 ERA, can't argue with the results so far this year. 64 innings and 11 starts. He gives you good depth. Great opportunity to chase a win, chase a quality start here with Shane McClanahan. So I like the spot. I like the opportunity. I don't like the price. I'm hoping that the price keeps his ownership a little bit lower than it should be. There are similarly priced pitchers who are a little bit cheaper with similar upside. So maybe we get McClanahan a little bit of an ownership discount for the expensive pay up to be different spot. I think you can take Rays bats despite the conditions. Like I said, the wind is not aggressively bad. What I don't like about the Rays is their pricing now. We're talking on DK. I guess they're still somewhat affordable. In the low fives, nobody over that superstar $6,000 price tag, and a few guys in the threes. But the FanDuel slate, we got 4 of these hitters now in the $4,000 price range, so it makes them a little bit more difficult to roster. What you do gain over there is Brandon Lau for only $2,900, certainly helps you put some bats together. Harold Ramirez at $3,000, if he's in the lineup, helps you put some things together. And you've got some cheap-ish kind of options like Jose Siri, $3,500. He's been playing out of his mind. That's probably appropriate for him, but that's no longer a cheap Jose Siri. Oh, Siri, she started responding. She found something on the web for $3,500. I really hope she didn't order it. Anyway, lesson learned. Don't say that player's name while my phone is nearby. I didn't even know that feature was turned on my phone, actually. Siri has not done that in quite a while. Francisco Mejia, if he's doing the catching tonight, value type of a catcher, but hasn't been great over his 90 plate appearances this year. Never really became the player that we thought he'd be. But I think you can go to Rays up and down if you want to. Going up against Kyle Hendricks, there's certainly going to be plenty of contact available, a little bit of power upside available here. You can see some nice marks shining through in the old home run the old home run model today. Yandy Diaz, Brandon Lau, and Randy Arozarena all pushing the magic number there. Cubbies on the other side, like if you want to go to Cubs, it's fine. There are bats. You guys know that I do think a lot of Dansby Swanson, Ian Happ, Seiya Suzuki, Chris Morel, Patrick Wisdom in the core of that lineup. Nico Hoerner's been productive, 12 stolen bases on the season so far, 3 home runs. So there's productive hitters in that lineup, but they haven't really strung together a ton of quality all at the same time so far this season. Pat Wisdom is the big power bat down there, so maybe you grab some one-off shares of Wisdom if you want to attack Shane McClanahan, but ultimately you're grabbing a lousy team against one of the best pitchers on the slate. So why bother when there's 26 teams to choose from, right? That's kind of how I'm seeing the Cubbies tonight. The Los Angeles Angels, still of Anaheim, even though they're not branded that way, I believe. They're going up against Luke Giolito. Giolito's kind of interesting. 9,200, 10,000. Those are pretty affordable prices for a pitcher that I still believe in. Is 23.9% strikeout rate, 11.9% swinging strikes, 27.6% CSW. Those have dipped a little bit since the last compared to the last couple of years, but a 3.98 ERA, a 4.39 xFIP, it's not great, but I think he's talented enough that he could find some strikeouts against a free swinging team if he manages to get through Trout and Ohtani and some Hunter Renfroe. There's kind of a dip in quality on the back end of the projected lineup. You've got Jared Walsh. I like Jared Walsh overall, good lefty hitter, but he's just making his way back, 25 plate appearances on the season. Drury, for all his power, isn't a great hitter at the plate overall. Weak back end with Thais and Urshela. Zach Neto, I do believe in the hit tool, but another player, just 153 plate appearances after a very early call-up. He was drafted just last year and made it to the show already. So, it's a weak back end for the Angels. I think there's a little bit of price-based upside for Giolito here. You can see he only projects like in the middle of my pitching projections, like upper middle, and he is going up against a deadly good top end here. So there's reason to maybe roster some hedge stacks of Moniak, Trout, Ohtani, Hunter Renfroe, something like that. But it's not a great Angels lineup, and it's a decent enough spot for Giolito at price comparative to the McClanahans and so on of the world that I think you can get away with some shares. Not one to get carried away with, but maybe roster some shares of him, some shares of Angels bats coming back the other way. I think there's some opportunity. Certainly you grab Moniak, Trout, Ohtani, and Renfroe. You've got a ton of power on this lineup. Trout, Ohtani, and Renfroe, 12, 12, and 10 home runs. Brendan Drury sitting at 9 home runs. All those guys, 200 plus ISOs. So definitely a ton of power in that lineup. Jared Walsh, nice power bat for only 24-22 at first base across sites is kind of interesting if he's in the lineup. So the Angels are in play as well. The White Sox, I think, are an interesting spot today. Tyler Anderson, low-end pitcher. I have no interest in him. If you wanted to argue clean innings against an underperforming White Sox lineup for 5,700 as an SP2 option on DK, go for it if you wanna, but 13.6% strikeouts, 10.5% walks, a 4.81 ERA, a worse 6.15 xFIP on the season. So he's gotten lucky to have pitched to a 4.81 ERA so far. It's not great for Tyler Anderson. He does limit hard hits at 31.1%, 86.7% miles an hour of average exit velo. Difficult to homer against, but I think there's enough upside to string together some runs, depending on which version of this White Sox lineup we get. They got Eloy Jimenez back. They've got Moncada back in the lineup, so they're arguably in full form at this point and potentially gonna be better. And now they're sitting at cheap prices. You can get Tim Anderson, Eloy Jimenez, Luis Robert, Joan Moncada, Andrew Vaughn, Jasmani Grandal, Jake Berger, Clint Frazier. All those guys are playable parts. The Grandal, Berger, Frazier end of it, less so. But the top end, those are guys who are the 1 through 5 here are star-ish, star or just below star caliber players in seasons past who come at cheap prices, a lot of ability, so they don't put up monster numbers in the home run model, but there's a few guys that are, approaching the magic number, well above average here. Berger, I think, was, definitely just a hot start type of a guy. 10 home runs in 132 plate appearances to start the season, 322 ISO. If he's got 25 at the end of the season, I'll probably be pretty shocked. So I don't think he's going to have a career year massive breakout, become a star type season, but if he's in the lineup, he's playable. Clint Frazier, 2,100, 2,200. I think there's upside for Frazier, who for some reason has not landed in the Fangraphs statistics board, and that's sorted for 0 qualified plate appearances so that I get everybody, and I went back and searched it again to see if he was there, and for some reason it wasn't coming up. They just haven't put him in the stats yet. I don't know why. He's made some plate appearances for this team, so the idea of upside, he's a guy, I talked about it, over time, just kept running headlong into walls, coming up with weird injuries, but not like structural, terrible, bad injuries. Was at one point a top-ranked prospect in baseball as an outfielder, decent power, decent speed. There's a little bit of upside there at 2,200, particularly if you're building a bunch of White Sox stacks. So I think there's a reason to go to this team today. They were sitting at a decent run total as well, 4.89. That's one of the higher totals on the board. You can see there's a lot of lowish totals on the board today. So I think the White Sox are in play today. Despite their underperformance so far this season, they come at good prices. There are reasons to believe. That said, Tyler Anderson, like I said, does cap power potential. So we might not get the home runs. We need them to string together their hits. We need them to hit doubles and drive in runs. And, if the ball's going to be kept on this side of the fence, they need to create those runs. So with limited expectation, I would rank them, maybe upper middle in terms of stacks today. But I will have some. Twins, I talked about everything in that game, right? Yeah, no need to roster Anderson. Twins lineups confirmed. Let's see if we have the Astros yet. We do. Let me grab this. Make sure to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, all those good things that help us all out so much. Gun DM me, by the way. Our pal Gundacker DM me on Twitter. I mentioned the other day that he hit me up in a public tweet asking if we should collaborate at some point, and I said we definitely should. He hit me up via direct message saying, hey, when are we going to jump on together? So we're going to make that happen at some point. It's only Tuesday, so maybe later this week, but we'll definitely make that happen at some point soon and get us both on a show and have some fun. Let's look at this game now. We've got Mr. Joey Gallo in the leadoff spot once again, which I love. Got a little bit carried away with my Gallo shares after warning everybody on yesterday's show that the Twins were looking a little bit like a spot that was, just destined to be, maybe a couple of homers and not that great for run creation. I got way too many Twins in my lineups yesterday. Kind of got rushed at the end and didn't get a chance to whittle it down the way that I normally would have. I got way carried away on Joey Gallo, but I would come back to a significant amount of ownership on him again in this spot going up against Brandon Bielak. Certainly a lot of home run upside. 4 starts, 25 and a third innings for Bielak so far. Only a 3.55 ERA, but a 4.50 xFIP, and has given up a significant amount of premium contact. 44.9% hard hits, 90 miles an hour of average exit velo, 15.4% barrel rate, and 5.50% home run rate in the very small sample. So you get Joey Gallo, you get Carlos Correa, you get Byron Buxton here. Guy that we didn't talk about yesterday because I didn't know he was going to be in the lineup, Royce Lewis, came in, homered yesterday in 5 plate appearances. He was at the dead minimum as a surprise yesterday, and they brought him right back at the dead minimum price on both sites. Major asset on both sites. Royce Lewis, former top-end prospect, definitely a guy that I will have a significant amount of in my Twins stacks. I think he's a viable one-off at shortstop for the dead minimum price. That's a mistake price on both sides for that player. So there's major upside there. I think there's sneaky good upside in Max Kepler hitting 7th here, only 3,900, 2,700. He might project for a little bit of ownership, but I like the home run upside for Kepler there. So 1 through 7 with the Twins lineup, with the corollary that both Michael A. Taylor and Christian Vasquez in the past have provided those weird slate-bending low-owned home runs. Michael A. Taylor has done it this season, only cost 2,200, 2,500 across sites. He's got 6 homers in the books in 144 plate appearances, 13.1% barrel rate. That's a player that, when he comes in with nobody on him, can be interesting from the bottom of a lineup for a very, very low price. He can help make other things happen in a stack. He can help pay for a better pitcher. Like if you went to him over Max Kepler, I wouldn't call you completely insane. I like Kepler better, obviously, but the savings that he provides, especially on DK at 1,700 less, can afford a major upgrade at pitcher or a major upgrade in another spot. And maybe you buy that, that home run that's owned at 2% versus 12%. Or, well, it's a big slate. Maybe Max doesn't get the 12%, but you take my point, right? So I think there's value at least 1 through 8, and Christian Vasquez, if you want to use him as a sneaky catcher, maybe you can get away with it. Premium value 1 through 7 in the Twins lineup today going up against Bielak. 20.2% strikeout rate. I don't really see much reason to go to Bielak. He's super cheap at 6,800 on DK. You got, I think, 1 or 2 decent starts out of him. So maybe you can go there, but it's not great. It's not a great spot for me. At price, fine if you want to take shares against what you're playing for. There is the Twins strikeout rate, 25.7% strikeouts for the season for this confirmed lineup. First 2 guys in the lineup sitting at 35% strikeouts. An interesting way to begin a lineup. We talked about Gallo's ability to get on base and offset that with 16% walks, which, three true outcomes hitter up there. But it could certainly be two quick punch outs to start the day for the Twins here. The Astros side of things, they look a little low end. They've been underperforming. They're still, mostly fairly high priced, especially on DK. A little bit more affordable on the FanDuel slate, but they've underperformed for this season. So going up against Joe Ryan, who's one of the top projected pitchers, 11,100, 11,000. What I'm hoping is the price and the matchup against the Astros keeps Ryan a little bit under-owned so that I can kind of exploit that. He's been excellent this season. 28.9% strikeout rate for the year, a 2.21 ERA, a 3.31 xFIP, 4.1% walks. Another guy just doesn't get himself into trouble. 10 starts, 61 innings, nice average depth of start there. Got the ability to chase a win and a quality start here. You need the Twins offense to come through to support that, but I think the idea of a quality start, even at price, is certainly viable here. 13.9% swinging strike rate puts him among the league leaders. 28.9% CSW is certainly fine. So plenty of upside here. I will definitely have some Joe Ryan. I wouldn't tell anybody they're making a mistake if they go to the Astros bats. There's tons and tons and tons of talent in that lineup. We all know that. But they've underperformed. Jeremy Pena has underperformed his talent levels, though he did hit 2 more home runs. Now has 8 homers, 6 stolen bases, but 2% below average creating runs. Altuve's got 2 homers in his tiny 36 plate appearance sample since coming back from the injury. He's obviously a star, obviously has tons of power, stolen base upside, run creation upside, great leadoff hitter, and he's actually pretty cheap for his talent, 52.35 across sites. So Altuve should be more expensive. You can use him, but he'll be one of the more popular hitters. Jordan Alvarez, their best hitter, has been a star all season long, has not underperformed by any means, but is appropriately priced. 6,100, 4,400. That's dead on. That's a bullseye for where his price should be most slates. 14 homers, 314 ISO, 71% better than average creating runs. That all adds up, but you're not getting a discount. You're not getting and there's not, there's a lot of name brands that surround him in the lineup, but everybody else is underperforming. So interesting spot there with a very good pitcher on the mound on the other side. Maybe you can one-off Alvarez. Maybe that's the approach. 19.8% barrel rate, 54.8% hard hits, and all that power. So definitely reasons to believe in the Alvarez side of this, if nothing else. But it's not a great spot for stacking. Alex Bregman, Kyle Tucker, obvious talents. Bregman has underperformed and may be on the back end of the career at this point. Tucker has underperformed, but is a young player who I still expect to hit 30 home runs and steal 25 bases this season. I think it's just a little bit of a dip for Tucker here. Abreu, we talked about yesterday, got on the board for his first home run. He's super cheap, but he's been bad so far this year. Corey Julks, Chas McCormick, Cesar Salazar down the bottom of the lineup. I like McCormick, but he hasn't really produced and hasn't hit with his usual contact profile this year. Julks has produced a little bit, 3 home runs, 6 stolen bases, both of them below average for run creation so far this year. Salazar, super cheap catcher if you go that route. Another interesting pitching matchup here. The Yanks obviously pounded poor Bryce Miller, which turned out to be a day-killing mistake after I put both Logan Allen and Bryce Miller in my season-long lineup in that Dynasty League. And Logan Allen obviously went out and had a great day. Bryce Miller, not so much against my Yanks. Aaron Judge hit 2 home runs yesterday. I think the second one came off the bullpen, but they hit a couple homers against him. He ended up giving up a handful of runs. Yanks had a nice day. Bryce did not. But I think we go right back to pitching against the Yankees here with Logan Gilbert on the hill. 10-2, 10-6 across sites. Decent projection in the upper middle of the board. 29.6% strikeout rate. Another guy excellent for walks, 4.3% walk rate. Never gets himself into trouble. A control command specialist. So I think there's good reason to roster Gilbert with strikeout potential going up against these Yankees. We know they're a top-heavy lineup. We'll check out what if the lineup got confirmed here real quick. Nope, no confirmed lineups in this one yet. So dealing with the projected version of the Yankees lineup, we know we've got Aaron Judge lurking at the top of the lineup. We'll see if we get Anthony Rizzo. He banged up his neck the other day in a play where, I forget who it was coming back into first base on a pickoff attempt and ran into Rizzo. They got the out, but he came up hurt, sat out last night's game. So question mark on whether Rizzo plays. LeMahieu, fine, but striking out too much and not hitting for enough power. So it's Glaber, it's Judge. We'll see if we get Rizzo. LeMahieu's a maybe, but a good buy at price with multi-position eligibility on the FanDuel slate. Third base only cuts into his upside as well on DK, but only 2,800, so there's definitely upside for LeMahieu in general, and with 3 position eligibility on FanDuel, he's a nice little piece. But he hasn't been great. A 101 WRC plus, only 6 home runs, and like I said, doubled his strikeout rates year over year. If you get the version of the lineup then that has Willie Calhoun, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, Jake Bauers, Kyle Higashioka, I like. Anthony Volpe's fine, but if you get that version of the lineup, that's a week 5 through 7. So there's a big hole in the heart of the lineup here if they go with this version. Higashioka, fantastic contact profile, 18.5% barrel rate, 53.7% hard hit rate, just hits everything hard when he manages to connect. He strikes out a lot, he doesn't walk a lot. He's not a very good hitter, but he has power when he does make contact. So that's what we're hunting at catcher for 2,500 on the DK slate, 2,400 on FanDuel. If you wanted to use him as a util, spot, or if Rizzo's not in the lineup, you want to put him in that first base catcher spot. I don't think you're necessarily making a mistake in light doses, small shares. Volpe for counting stats, 10.2% barrel rate, 44.5% hard hits is very good so far this season. 7 home runs, 13 stolen bases for counting stats is very good. But overall, 156 ISO, 76 WRC plus, and 215 plate appearances, below the Mendoza line so far. 198, 279, 354. Kid's got to turn it on a little bit with the hit tool. The infrequent power of the stolen base upside is nice, but I need you to get on base better than 279. I need you to hit better than 198 if you're going to play shortstop for me at Yankee Stadium. That said, DFS upside for sure. Going to the Mariners side of things, Nestor has been really struggling. If you guys have questions, by the way, throw it into the chat. I know I'm kind of flying through here. I'm just trying to get through some of these this giant slate, and we're already coming up on like an hour that I've been talking here. So just drop them in. But Nestor's a big question mark, right? He's been scuffling this year. 5.30 ERA, a 4.97 xFIP, 23.2% strikeouts. He has not been the charmed pitcher that he was over the last couple of seasons. There are strikeouts to be had in this Mariners lineup for sure. 25.9% strikeout rate overall for the season in the projected lineup. They come cheap. They've got power. I'm concerned about the spot here for Nestor. You can see he projects out very, very well for me, and I will have shares 8,600, 8,300. I think the price is adjusted for the struggles. So at price, I think he's fine to go to, but I question what my expectation is for him in this spot and kind of going forward for the season. He also hasn't been really pitching deep into games with him getting into trouble, Boone with his quick hook. It's not been ideal. So we question the opportunity there with Nestor, but at price, I will have some. At price and with the idea of some potential strikeouts. So both sides for the pitchers here, with more enthusiasm for Gilbert at his heavy price than for Nestor at his value-based price. But I'll take my shares, I'll take my shots with Nestor and hope for the good version of Nestor to rip here. I don't know if it's a pitch clock thing. I see Guns in the chat. Gun, if you got thoughts on what's ailing Nestor here, if it's like the pitch clock getting to him with just the way that he approaches the game with changing up pace and changing up all his timing, keeping hitters off guard and off their toes. Let us know what you think there, Gun. And looking forward, I was talking about it. I don't know if you were here, Gun, yet when I was talking about our potential collaboration coming up, or our planned and confirmed collaboration that we just need to figure out a time for. Nestor time through the order has been the problem, yeah, and that's why Boone's been kind of quick with that hook. That's why we, at the FanDuel price, I question the ability to get to that quality start. So it's dicey. But we'll see what we get with Nestor. You can definitely go to the Mariners side of things here, though, with the idea of some power upside, with the idea of some run creation upside. Julio Rodriguez, Jared Kelenic, Eugenio Suarez, Cal Raleigh, Teoscar Hernandez, dynamite power core through the heart of that lineup. Ty France, the hit tool's been down a little bit this year. The power's been down a little bit this year, but still creating runs at a decent clip, still getting on base at a decent clip. I like J.P. Crawford as a cheap shortstop at the top of the lineup with his ability to get on base ahead of these hitters. So really, 1 through 7, I really like the looks of that Mariners lineup. I will definitely both sides this one, and they're affordable on both sides. Mid fours to 5,600 for Julio on the DK slate, 38 for Julio on the FanDuel slate, with everybody else in the high 2s to low 3s. That's an easy enough lineup to get together. Fanatic, I should probably thank Gun for sending us all of you my way. I do thank Gun for sending all of. I actually thanked Gun several hours before this show started for having done that. I thanked him for the amplification, the retweets, all that good stuff in the DMs that we're sharing about when we can jump on together and do one of these shows together. So yes, thank you to our pal Gundacker. Happy that he's here hanging out. I really, really appreciate the amplification because I suck at that. So you guys out there too, feel free, spread the word, retweet, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff, and help get it going. But yeah, Jeff says he had no idea I had a solo channel. I didn't for quite some time. You're here for like the 4th or 5th broadcast. or 4th, I think. So I just started up the live shows. I've been doing a solo website, rotoscouts. Kind of soft launched it. Didn't tell too many people. Only decided to do it. I was debating whether or not I was going to do it. We are wasting time here. I only decided that I was going to do it the night before opening day. I've had the Twitter handle since like 2011. I registered the name of the website back then, and just never did anything with it. And then when I wasn't creating as much content for Stochastic, just kind of out of boredom, kind of out of the idea that my lady friend was giving me a little bit of shit about, like, your income's good, but it's not predictable, and what if, like, blah, 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 blah. And so, I said, okay, well, something I can do to, maybe create a revenue stream one day. Not that I've monetized any of this. Everything's free at the site. I was like, screw it. Night before opening day, I was like, all right, let's launch the site. Decided to start writing. So I'm producing content, writing an article, overview article every day. I'll be doing these shows every day. Got the home run picks, the power projections up there, the power index up there on the site every day. I will at some point start doing, I think, a top stacks piece, a top pitchers piece, where we're just kind of ranking and putting some additional data on it. Somebody asked about selling projections. Maybe we'll get there at some point. It's one day I will monetize things some way, whether that's through it gets popular because it's free and people want to sponsor it. Who the hell knows? We don't need to waste time on this on a 13-game slate. Let's talk. We talk Mariners bats. We talk Yankees bats. So this is a little bit of a four corners game for me. I'll have shares of my Yanks. I'll have shares of the Mariners, and I'll have shares of both pitchers. Probably, if I had to rank it, I'd probably go Gilbert, Mariners, Nestor, Yankees, if I'm ranking the four corners of this. But I will have all four parts of this one. Some interesting stuff to talk about on the back end of this slate, so we need to hit the old gas pedal here a little bit. Bryce Elder, one of my top projected pitchers at 9.3, 10.4. I think he's a very nice buy across sites going up against this totally dead, flat Oakland lineup. And I think the Braves bats are a strong play against JP Sears, who has been pitching a little bit above expectations in recent weeks. 23.4% strikeout rate overall for Sears, a 4.70 ERA, a 4.80 xFIP. What I think we can target here, especially with the Braves bats, is the 11% barrels that he's giving up, is the 5.41% home run rate that he's given up for the season. Lot of right-handed power in that Braves lineup going up against the lefty here. I would not roster Sears in this spot. 7,300, 7,200, with the idea of chasing some strikeouts, I would probably tell you that's not the right spot to do it. It wouldn't knock me out of my chair if you put up a serviceable start for Price today, but I just think we've got such a big slate. We've got such a good opportunity on the other side with the Braves bats here that I don't necessarily want to limit that by going to shares of Sears. So if you want to do it, if you were already sold somewhere else, or if you're in the Sears family, or if you really like to shop at Sears, then go for it. But it's not really my spot. So the other side of it, though, Elder, I will have a significant amount of. I think nothing of this A's lineup. I think he's been pitching very well. 2.01 ERA, a 3.58 xFIP for the season. He's not a major source of strikeouts, but there are enough strikeouts in this Oakland lineup that he could go out, have a very nice game, pitch 7 clean innings, chase a win, chase a quality start bonus, find a few additional strikeouts along the way. We've seen him do it a number of times already this season. So I actually want to be a part of that Elder party this time out. I expect he'll be pretty popular on a 12-gamer or 13-gamer, but with that size slate, it's not going to be, untenable popularity. I wouldn't expect for this pitcher. The prices are good, so I think it's a great spot to go to. I don't need any athletics on the other side of it. If you wanted to take some contrarian athletics, maybe it's one of your okay spots for contrarian bats. Like, I don't necessarily want to take some of the other bad teams against good pitchers who maybe have higher strikeout rates and limit power a little bit better than Elder does. For all his quality, he still does have a 48.2% hard hit rate, 91.2 miles an hour of average exit velo, but he's good at keeping the ball down. He's a 6.5 degree average launch angle, only 1.69% home runs. So there's not a lot of home run upside for a team that's not very good at hitting home runs. We talk about Brent Rooker all the time. I wrote about him again today, did the little May recap. He is significantly below the Mendoza line now for the month of May on the next to last day of May. He's got the same 11 home runs that he had on May 12th. He is not a good hitter, despite what the numbers in the stat line, the rapidly declining stat line there will tell you. So I don't like Rooker. If you're going to A's, maybe take a couple of the lefties like Ryan Noda, Seth Brown, maybe put him together with a cheap Shea Langoliers at catcher, but it's not a good lineup. JJ Bleday would be another name in that group that I would maybe roster as a lefty. I gotta fix his name in my numbers here. Those stupid initial names always screw me up. So, yeah, the A's side of things, not pretty here, but the Braves side of things, my God, is this a good spot for Braves. Tons of power in this lineup, 11, 17, 10, 11, 11, 10. Those are the home run totals for the top 6 hitters in the lineup. Major power. Nobody needs to be sold on the Braves upside here, but we've got a 247 average ISO for those top 6 hitters. That's just incredible. Those hitters are Ronald Acuna Jr., Matt Olson, Austin Riley, Sean Murphy, Marcell Ozuna, and Ozzie Albies. I wouldn't sleep on Orlando Arcia, who I've talked about a little bit. He's a cheap infielder. He's only shortstop eligible for 35 on the DK slate, but you get him at 3 positions for 29 on FanDuel. Decent amount of power, having a nice season in 125 plate appearances, 304, 360, 470, creating runs 24% better than average. 4 home runs already this season, and he had a sneaky little 9 home runs in 234 plate appearances last year, so there's a decent stick there at cheap prices, and nobody goes to him. So he's a nice little piece, particularly on the FanDuel slate. You can move him around positionally and create unique combinations with this lineup, which I love. If you get Pilar, he's a defense specialist, but he's got 5 home runs, oddly, on the season, a 222 ISO in Atlanta. I actually didn't notice that earlier, so maybe a little bit of sneaky value out of Pilar. We know he's not that guy, but hey, he's doing it this season. Mikey Harris, struggling this season badly after being the Rookie of the Year, but did homer last night to get to 2 on the year, but it hasn't been pretty for Mikey. Missed a lot of the season with injury, so working his way back to form. I do believe in the hitter. Over the long term, I think he'll be fine. So if I'm going to this one, it's all about the Braves. Bryce Elder, significant shares. Brave stacks, significant shares. Low-end Rockies against the excellent Zach Gallen. That leads me to 0 shares of the Colorado Rockies bats. I don't think this is a good spot to say, hey, I'm going to be contrarian and roster a bad team against a good pitcher who will probably be popular, yada, yada, yada. It's just not a good spot. 28.3% strikeout rate for Gallen, 5.3% walks, a 2.97 ERA, a 3.15 xFIP on the year. 44.6% hard hits, 90.6 miles an hour of average exit velo that have amounted to nothing. 0.75% home run rate so far this year, despite that contact. So love Gallen here against the low-end Rockies. 10-7, 10-7 on both sites. He's cheap compared to the McClanahans of the world at over 11. So I expect him to be the most popular out of that group, which I think helps support the case for McClanahan potentially being under-owned at his higher price. So I think that leads me to probably having a little bit more McClanahan, a little bit less Gallen in the field, but we'll see how all of that shakes out, and I think either of them is a terrific option. Probably prefer Gallen if I was taking ownership out of the equation in a vacuum at a cheaper price against a lousy Rockies lineup here. If you're getting the lineup that has Profar at the top, for me, I would just skip him. I just don't think anything of that player. You don't have to fully skip him. If you're building 150 Rocky stacks, obviously you would have some. But he is not good and has not been good. Chris Bryant is good, but has not been good. 30.9% hard hit rate for the season, 5 home runs, a 113 ISO, 88 WRC plus. I know Chris Bryant's better than that. Maybe the injury from last year is still hampering him. I don't know what's going on there. Ryan McMahon, ton of power, 8 home runs on the season at 226 ISO. If I'm grabbing one Rocky, if somebody puts a gun to my head, says I have to one-off a Rocky, that's probably the guy from the left side of the plate against Gallen. Elias Diaz for 4,900 as a catcher. He's viable. He's had a really nice season, 335, 388, 516 with a 130 WRC plus and 178 plate appearances. One of the more everyday catchers in the league, and a guy you can kind of go to at that position. You just wish he was on a better team with a better lineup around him. Grichuk has been good in 97 plate appearances since coming back. I believe Nolan Jones is a good hitter with a decent amount of power. Once we get him full time with this team, that was the guy that they decided like the last day of spring training, hey, let's sign Jerickson Profar and send this kid down instead. They've had a couple options at that third base spot. He plays both corner infield spots. First base outfield on DK at 3,100, 2,600 at third base on FanDuel. Was raking in the minors, and I expect him to hit for power in the majors. So we'll see what happens there. Brenton Doyle, 4 home runs and 84 plate appearances on the season. A little bit of lurking power from the right side of the plate down there, but it is not great going up against Zach Gallen, so I don't think we need to go there. I do think we need to go to Diamondbacks bats against Kyle Freeland, though. Freeland is a get-by kind of a pitcher who, can find clean innings from time to time, but non-threatening in terms of strikeouts. 17.4% strikeout rate over 11 starts, 58 1/3 innings this year for Freeland. Gives up a moderate amount of power, premium contact, 39.2% hard hits, 7% barrels, 3.31% home run rate. There's upside for days for this Diamondbacks lineup. You can see a bunch of decent projections down there, and they're carrying one of the higher implied team totals on the slate. They were sitting at 5.27 So the third highest implied team total, behind only the Red Sox and the Dodgers, and ahead of the Cardinals. So I think that's a good spot here. Ketel Marte, his $3,000 price at second base on FanDuel, that's really cheap. The $4,900 is a good price on the DK slate, but at second base, a short position, I really like that price for Ketel Marte, who's been good this year. 17% better than average creating runs, 7 home runs, 5 stolen bases on the year. Nice little triple slash, so go to Ketel Marte. Manuel Rivera, 2,900, 2,700 at third base, 343, 370, 471 on the year, 28% better than average. Small sample, only 1 home run on the season in only 73 plate appearances, and was not that great outside of, I think it was 12 home runs last year. Wasn't overly great in a larger sample last year, but I think he's viable, and he's definitely a nice discount at the top of the lineup. Lourdes Gurriel should be more expensive than 4,400 on DK. Christian Walker should be more expensive than 4,600 on DK. They're both mid-range prices, fairly appropriate prices on the FanDuel slate, but could be arguably a little higher. Ton of power in those two bats. Lourdes Gurriel having a very nice year. 9 home runs on the season, 319, 369, 566, 247 ISO, creating runs 49% better than average. Excellent season for him. Christian Walker, just a ton of power. Evan Longoria, if you get him here against the lefties, specializing in platoons against lefties, 6 home runs, 95 plate appearances on the season for only 31.27. He's got a 12.3% barrel rate, 57.9% hard hits. You can still go to Evan Longoria. If the Diamondbacks put him in the lineup, you can put him in yours. That's basically the way to approach Evan Longoria these days. I guess that goes without saying, since you wouldn't play him if he wasn't in the lineup. Shit. Oh well, thought that was clever. Corbin Carroll drops in the lineup lefty, but still a very nice price for a kid who can get on base, can hit one out of the park. 8 home runs, 14 stolen bases, 220 ISO, 34% better than average. Gabriel Moreno, another very good young catcher, 3,200, 2,600. Nice little season for him, been productive at the plate for cheap prices, so I think you go to him. Nick Ahmed, Jake McCarthy round out the lineup. Jake McCarthy was kind of highly regarded and, like a late draft type of a guy with stolen base upside, the idea of some power upside in redraft leagues coming into the year. Completely burned anybody who drafted him late in redraft leagues with the expectation of filling in some stolen bases for you. Got sent back to the minors. You can see over 83 plate appearances, including some in the past week. 162, 253, 257, a 42 WRC plus, 5 steals and a homer. That's fine, but has not really produced. But I still do believe that there's talent in that player. So getting him super cheap, bottom of the lineup, use him as a wraparound play with the idea of some power, some speed upside. I think that's viable. Don't love him lefty here. Might not play, but if you get him, I think you can go to him because I think they're going to chase Freeland. Got all corners of that one, right? So, a lot of enthusiasm for both Gallen and the Diamondbacks bats in this one, to summarize. 2 games ago, hour and 15 minutes or so into the show. Not bad. Decent pace for a 13-gamer. Let's see what everybody's commenting here. Travis Duarte, thoughts on Mets catcher? It was... they didn't do anything funky, right? It was Francisco Alvarez. Yeah, we talked about Alvarez back at the top of the show, but my thoughts are that he is a burgeoning star. He's a top prospect who was brought up early and has already, kind of figured it out. I was worried about the early promotion because they brought him up to cover Tomas Nido got hurt, Omar Narvaez got hurt. So they were like, hey, he's our next man up, even though he's not really fully seasoned yet. And he's just been raking. 8 home runs in 100 and change plate appearances. Nice little ISO. So a kid, he's probably not giving up that catcher position in Queens for the better part of the next decade or so. I expect him to hit. I think he's in a great spot in that lineup hitting second. So if you're going to Mets, I would not skip Francisco Alvarez. What else was in the chat there? Liked him. That was the second game. Yeah. So the guys answered the question in the chat. That would be interesting. Held to come point to pick a Rocky. Yeah. That would be a weird home invasion if somebody broke in here only to hold a gun to my head and force me to play Rockies in my 150 lineups, or 1 Rocky per lineup. Let's see. The Pirates, Johan Oviedo. Raise your hand if you remember Johan Oviedo making a start on a main slate this season. I don't. I wrote about him today when I was like, I seriously don't remember. Maybe early in the year, but he's made 10 starts. I just don't remember this guy. I don't remember talking about him or writing about him at all this season. 4.70 ERA, 4.62 xFIP, 19.4% strikeout rate. Walks way too many at 10.1%. Has not given up a ton of home runs, 5.7% barrel rate. Keeps the ball down at a decent pace at 8.7 degrees, 2.02% home run rate. The Giants need their home runs to produce. They've got a lot of power. They're a free swinging club. I think there's a little bit of upside for them here, but I'm tepid with the potential to, maybe limit home run power. So I would get to some Giants, but I wouldn't get carried away with it here. If I'm going to that team, I'm looking at Lamont Wade, I'm looking at Mike Yastrzemski, Michael Conforto. Blake Sable, I think, is an interesting cheap player with catcher eligibility on the DraftKings slate for only $3,500. Travis says Giants have been scrappy. I don't know if he means scrappy or if that was a typo and he meant to say crappy, but I think both could apply. I've gone to them and gotten burnt this year. I've gone to them and gotten nice production. So there's a couple hitters that I really do like in this lineup. J.D. Davis being one of them, who I've been talking about and selling all season long. I believed for a long time in his contact profile and has really come through now that he's finally gotten a full-time job. Michael Conforto, I believe in the power, and I think the hit tool is rounding into form, so I like him quite a bit. Mitch Haniger, he's hit, 39 home runs 2 years ago. A major source of power, just can never stay healthy. But when he's healthy, I think he's a good opportunity in that lineup. So I just, at least 1 through 6, I think the Giants are playable. I would just temper expectations. I would have them kind of in that upper middle range in terms of where I'm stacking them. But I would get to them for sure. On a big slate, I want to get to a little bit of as much as I possibly can on a slate this size. I think somebody did ask that early in the chat. We had more chats than I was expecting today, so it scrolled past kind of quick. But somebody asked how to approach a big slate. For me, I'm looking to focus on some of the key pitchers, both from the top tier of pricing and the value guys that I identify. But I would kind of clip my pitching pool a little bit short. I think there's plenty of expendable options to take out of the pool or to roster in very, very small doses there. And then I want to spread out to as many different of the higher end hitting options as I can, right? It doesn't mean spread out and take tons and tons of Rockies against Zach Gallen, but it does mean spread out and try and cover some of the mid-range options, some of the options that are potentially going a little bit under-owned, maybe get away from some of the higher-owned stacks. Like I said, the Dodgers are the highest implied team total. They're the highest ranked team in my power index for home run upside today, but I expect they're going to be wildly popular. So if I undercut the Dodgers a little bit, spread some of those shares out to teams that I like the White Sox, the Cardinals, some of these other teams that we've talked about, maybe some extra shares of Giants bats. I think that's advantageous on a slate of this size because you're casting a broader net and you're looking to catch the wide range of outcomes. Obviously, I need to take a sip of iced tea. So we're looking to capture that broad range of outcomes in a highly variable sport. It's what we're doing on every slate, but it's a little bit more exaggerated on a 13-gamer, I think. So that's just kind of the way to capture the strategy for me. Pirates side of this one. Oviedo, I don't really see the need for 7,900, particularly on the FanDuel slate. I don't really think we've got the upside there. It's cheap enough, and he projects okay. You can see 24.35%. There's enough strikeouts to justify it potentially as a value play. But again, deep slate, there's a lot of options I'd like to go to. 6,400 on DK, a couple value darts. It wouldn't be the craziest idea in the world. There's enough idea of limiting power, limiting run creation, finding a few strikeouts. Maybe you can get away with it, but it's not a strong value play, and he's giving up too many free passes, and that's what's really burning him. So the 10.1% walk rate is just too aggressive. So not a great spot. Giants are going with a bullpen game. John Brebbia, a significant strikeout rate in his outings this year, 34.8% strikeout rate in 22 innings, but he's an opener. He's made three appearances as an opener. His last time out was 5 days ago. It was in a bullpen appearance in standard relief. He came in and pitched 2 innings. And is probably viable for 2 innings again today since it's been 5 days. But 8,600 is not a opener reliever discount $4,000 price on DK. I don't get that price at all unless we're expecting a full start, and I didn't notice it. But even still, like, he's not going to go from 2 innings to 7 innings. He's going to go from 2 innings to 4 innings maybe. Sure, but that still doesn't justify that price tag. 5,500 on FanDuel, I don't think we're getting there. So no pitching on the Giants side. I don't know who the bulk reliever is. I forgot to look that up just in the frantic effort to get all the games written up. So I forgot to look up who the bulk reliever is if they've named one. But I don't need pitching on this side. Pirates lineup, there's enough compelling options there. I just worry about the idea of Brebbia coming in and striking out the side twice, or striking out a handful of these hitters and limiting their upside for 2 innings to start the game. But if I'm going there, I think Marcano's certainly viable, 2,100, 2,300 across sites. 3 home runs, 3 stolen bases, a decent little start to the season in 100 plate appearances. Obviously, Brian Reynolds, Andrew McCutchen, Jack Suwinski. There's a ton of power in that group. There's a decent amount of run creation in that group. They've all been good this year. They're relatively relatively affordable, especially if you're putting all three of them together. You just average down the high price for Brian Reynolds by rostering the other two. So I think that's a nice little power core. You can add Connor Joe to it. He's had a productive season at the plate, 5 home runs. He's cooled off a little bit after his hot start, but I still think there's a decent enough bat there for price at 3,400, 2,700 that you can go to Connor Joe. Brian Hayes, we've talked about a couple times, should be a better hitter than this, but is not. So you can take him or leave him. The bottom of that lineup, Rodolfo Castro, G1 Bay, Jason DeLay, meh. A lot of meh down there. 15 stolen bases out of G1 Bay is what you're buying if you go to him, but it's kind of a weak back end. A team that I'd be limited, a handful of shares if you're going to Pirates here, and it's not great with the idea of an effective opener for strikeouts at the top of the lineup. Top of the game, excuse me. Last game of the slate. Let's go around again, talk about the whole thing again. I wrote it up for hours and hours, and I talked about it for going on an hour and a half now. Let's just go around again. We'll just keep on talking about it till lock. We're not going to do that. I need to take the dog for a walk, then I need to build lineups. I forgot to replace Luis Garcia again. Ignore the price. Obviously, Luis Garcia is not 10,300, 9,600 in the second spot in that lineup, and he plays the infield, not a pitcher. I don't like the Nationals. You guys know that. When they're facing a lefty, I think we can go to them a little bit more effectively. They've been productive / frisky, at least against lefties. A little bit of power against lefties. Against righties, they've been mostly flat. And I think enough of Tony Gonsolin, who is projecting out to a decent number at 28.3 in my FanDuel model, especially at 8,000 on the DK slate. I think there's nice opportunity for Gonsolin here. So I would be looking to the Tony Gonsolin side. What I question with him is the depth of start. He was limited in his first 2 outings on pitch count, so we have to take the innings total in 6 starts with a bit of a grain of salt because of that, but still hasn't reached 6 innings on the season. I think he went 5 2/3 in his last start. So the depth is a little bit questionable, but I think we're getting a good starter against a bad lineup that is particularly bad against right-handed pitching here. So I believe in the idea of some strikeout upside for Gonsolin. At 94 on FanDuel, it's a little bit more of a tall order just because he's got to get me that quality start on this slate, I think, because he's not the outrageous projection that some of the other pitchers are, or the outrageous strikeout option that some of the other pitchers are. So he's kind of a mid-range option for me on both sites, but I think he's in play. Stronger option on the DK slate at that $8,000 price. I think he's a viable SP2 over there if you don't go to any of the stronger value plays. Nationals bats I don't really need to go to. If you are going there, it's probably Lane Thomas, Candelario, some Joey Meneses, maybe some Corey Dickerson. It's not good. 2 guys in the lineup with any plate appearance sample to speak of above average. Lane Thomas at 117 WRC plus, and Heimer Candelario at 106 WRC plus in 220 plate appearances. Thomas is an effective major league hitter. Candelario is a mediocre major league hitter from both sides of the plate. He's terrible against lefties, by the way. So when this team faces lefties, I tend to skip him and play the other guys. Anyway, that doesn't matter today. It's not a good lineup. I'm not excited to go there. I will not have much, as you can see. We're only looking at red dots and black dots in that lineup, so it's not great. But that's, again, compared to the ridiculous projections that we're getting on the other side of this one, because the Dodgers face Jake Irvin today. Jake Irvin has made 5 starts, thrown 22 innings, 19% strikeout rate, 16% walk rate. That's aggressive. A 6.03 xFIP is worse than his 5.32 ERA. He has a 4.6% swinging strike rate. So he's walking 16%. This is a small sample. Let's keep that in mind, but he's not been good. Walking 16% in the small sample and only 4.6% swinging strikes against a lineup that the top several hitters walk at double-digit, top 4 hitters all walking at double-digit paces, all limiting strikeouts. The top 3 hitters limit strikeouts. Max Muncy strikes out 30% of the time, but Will Smith offsets that by striking out 8.6% of the time. Will Smith is so goddamn good at the plate. Excellent catcher there. So I think this is a good Dodgers team to go to. You've got obvious star power with Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. Mookie, with second base eligibility, by the way, is a dynamite buy at 5,500, 3,900. Like, those are not like crazy discounts comparative to discount values just if you take pricing in a vacuum, but getting that player at second base at that price is a discount and is a great play. I would roster the hell out of Mookie at second base, put him together with Freddie Freeman, with Will Smith. Max Muncy is my home run pick for the day. He's probably going to be super popular. I accidentally walked into what is probably a very chalky home run pick today, but as you can see, one of the slate leaders, 5,100, 3,700 across sites from Muncy is too cheap. 17 homers on the season, a 321 ISO, a 131 WRC plus. He's an outstanding power hitter. Another outstanding power hitter who I thought was going to fall off the face of the earth for power, but actually came roaring back to life. 16.2% power rate, 54.1% hard hits for Mr. JD Martinez in 169 plate appearances. 11 home runs on the season to tie Mookie Betts for second overall on the team. He's matching Max Muncy's 321 ISO so far. He's exceeding his WRC plus at 139. Killer season so far for Martinez, and he's still cheap, 4,600 on the DK slate. 38 is appropriate on FanDuel, but 46 is cheap for that hitter in this form on the DK slate. You hope that he plays. I don't see why he wouldn't play, but there's a few lefties that are potentially mix and match pieces that they might go with Jason Hayward, David Peralta, and James Outman, who is not in this projected lineup. Out of those guys, I would like to see the Hayward and Outman combination and leave David Peralta sitting on the bench, but we'll see what we get. Any one of them is playable from the left side of the plate. Hayward, I think, is a nice sneaky little option. He's shown some power upside this year. 224 ISO, 110 WRC plus, 44.3% hard hits, 5 home runs, and only 119 plate appearances. Nice little surprise from Jason Hayward, the established veteran. Outman has obviously been outrageous for power. Oh, it's Manaea. Thank you, Larry. I appreciate that. So that's important to talk about real quick. Manaea has been atrocious through all of the season, except for the last time that he did this. And then he came out of the bullpen as the bulk reliever and dominated the slate and put up a monster score that nobody owned. I doubt we get that again. It's possible. He's been a good pitcher over time. He's been a guy who has a good strikeout rate over time. But like I said, had just been bad this season. Let me see if I can do this real quick. Ignore the caps. Yeah, so here we go. Here's Manaea's numbers. Ignore everything that just happened in the model. I'll fix that in a second. But so in 6 starts, 32 2/3 total innings, we've got a 28.9% strikeout rate, which is like on brand for Manaea. But 12.5% walks were killing him. He was at a 6.61 ERA, a 4.32 xFIP. This is including the good outing the last time out. A 5.26% home run rate in, again, small sample. 91.1 mile an hour average exit velo, 16.3% power rate. He was giving up a ton of premium contact and power early in the season. Maybe this bulk relief role is more suiting for him right now, and maybe he'll come out and have that good outing again. I should have checked what his prices were. Oh well. So if you wanted to roll some dice in that spot, maybe you get away with it, but like asking for that to happen twice in a row is pushing it, I think. So that's not really a spot for me, not one that I'm going to chase. And especially on FanDuel, where I play most of my action, where I want that quality start bonus, you're not going to get that from a bulk reliever. So that takes him out of play for me on FanDuel. It's a DK option if you're looking that way. So we were talking Dodgers, which is the last piece of the puzzle here. We definitely don't need any Jake Irvin, even at the price on the DK slate. We don't need Dodgers Nationals bats. We do need Dodgers bats. We were down the bottom of the lineup. Miguel Vargas, nice little season for him with 5 home runs, 189 ISO, and a 105 WRC plus in 199 plate appearances, and came on a little bit in the month of May, so he's hitting a little bit better. Miguel Rojas, the other Miguel down the bottom of the lineup, has not been good at all this season. 60% below average creating runs so far for the season in 110 plate appearances for Rojas. He's very, very cheap. If you're going to full stacks of Dodgers and a bunch of them, maybe you use a few shares and you get that sneaky little stolen base and a few base hits kind of a score. But I don't expect much from Rojas down there. 5,900 on DK for Manaea. So yeah, like I said, it's not a great opportunity in my mind. I don't think I'm going to be looking at it if I was playing the DK slate. You do get them against the Pirates, so it's a opportunity to maybe find some strikeouts, maybe pitch through a low end team. But I'm not going to get totally sold on Manaea finding it for the season just based on that one appearance. I think it was only the one appearance. It's the only one I remember. I can look that up. It's important enough that I'll look it up. That was the only good outing, I think, right? The slate-breaking bulk relief appearance the other day. Of course, this is one of those times where Fangraphs is weirdly frozen. Here he comes. Sean Manaea game log. Thank you to our pals over at Fangraphs, by the way, who fuel so much of what I do. Okay, so that was 8 days ago. That was on the 22nd. 3 2/3, struck out 8. So if you expect him to come out and go 3 2/3, 4 innings, and strike out 8 to 10 hitters again, then sure, roll the dice on it, because then, even if he gives up a couple of runs, I'm not really going to be concerned about it. He did make another relief appearance after that, 1 1/3 innings, only faced 4 hitters. Looks like a standard relief appearance, not a bulk relief. Struck out 3 of those 4 hitters. You are potentially buying strikeout acumen. You're buying hopefully a couple clean innings and a handful of strikeouts if you do that. The price is good enough to do it. I'd rather be getting him at a lower 5s, or like that obviously you'd rather have him for 4,000 over there. But 59, maybe. Yeah, El Cuatro Loco says he had a tournament-winning start. Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of, was that big outing with the 8 strikeouts and bulk relief. But yeah, it's not great for Manaea. So I think that's a good point to maybe round things off, gang. We'll take a quick look. I'll scroll over to the pitching board and we'll take a quick look at that to round off the show. It's so much handier when I don't have to minimize this window so that it fits in the overlay here on what you guys can see. Because on my dashboard, this is just a big full screen, and I don't have to scroll over to see all this shit. It's just all laid out in front of me. As we can see, some oddball top-end starters based on weak matchups and the idea of clean innings, with Miles Mikolas and Bryce Elder up at the top here. I don't necessarily buy that they're the actual top-ranked pitchers here, but I think both of them are in line for good opportunities. Miles Mikolas at that price is definitely an interesting option going up against that KC lineup. He's got to pitch cleanly for power against, but I think if he gets deep into the game, I think he can find a handful of strikeouts and pay those salaries off nicely. Zach Gallen, I'm very interested in at price. I expect him to be the most popular of the Gallen, McClanahan, Joe Ryan group here, and you throw Logan Gilbert into that group as well, the expensive pitchers here. I think Zach Gallen against Colorado at 10-7 on both sites is going to be the most popular of that group. That makes me really like McClanahan, really like Joe Ryan. Ryan's probably got the most difficult matchup out of that group going up against Houston here. You could argue, however, that maybe Logan Gilbert does against the Yanks. So if I'm ranking it, assuming that I'm correct, that Gallen is the most popular, I would probably say McClanahan, then Gallen, then Joe Ryan, then Logan Gilbert out of that top 4 most expensive pitchers group, and then probably Giolito against the Angels. Nestor, I think, certainly viable. Nice little projection there for the 83-86 across sites. That said, I don't fully trust him right now with the current form and with the decent Seattle lineup on the other side. Kodai Senga could definitely have a nice start and could hit this value or thereabouts. He's got to limit the walks, got to limit some power upside, but he's got the wind at his back in Queens today, so I like the spot for Kodai Senga. Like I said, I will probably kind of cut this short in terms of where I'm rostering pitchers. So I wouldn't begrudge anybody a couple value options, particularly DK from this group, and it would probably be like Bayo, maybe some Ranger Suarez is interesting as a $5,200 value down there. Not Sears because of the matchup against Atlanta. Certainly not any of these guys. Maybe Belak at 68 as a DK play could find you a few strikeouts against Minnesota, but we were seeing some power upside there, so I don't love that. Nobody below that level, certainly. Kyle Freeland, if you wanted to play with fire at 65, maybe he finds you some clean innings and surprises the world. But if I'm cutting off, I'm probably doing it around like this level and going with just the guys up top here. Cal Quantrill, I definitely think is an interesting value play where he's projected here. Brebbia, I would, like I said, just ignore this. I didn't check ignore the pitching projection there for Brebbia. I didn't check what his innings projection was. It's probably pulling a weird innings projection for some reason. So yeah, that's what I'm looking at. And my realistic pool of starters is probably like this group here, plus like a few, handful of shares of Gilbert, handful of shares of Giolito, maybe a couple Bayos, but Bayos at 86 on FanDuel, so I like him a lot better on the DK slate. It's about where we're looking. Pitching projections have been hot the last couple of days for the most part. We had Logan Gilbert as our second-ranked pitcher, or Logan Allen, one of the Logans. Logan Allen. Yesterday we talked about him, and I soft sold it. I was saying that I didn't really trust it, so I don't want to do that as aggressively with Mikolas and Elder today. Let's go. Hopefully the model's right. Hopefully we can make some money off of these pitching projections today. That said, I'll be around Discord while I build my models. If we get anything weird in confirmed lineups, anything like that, feel free to hit me up in there and ask questions. Everybody who's joined us today for the first time, make sure you join our Discord as well. It's linked over at the top of Rotoscouts. A bunch of content up on rotoscouts.com as well. I may or may not update for confirmed lineups up on the site. I need a short break before I start building lineups. Good luck out there, boys. I'm killing the show at this point. See ya.